Welcome back to Box Office Maniacs, and it's horror month. So, it's only about a month late, and I was actually going to review this movie for you last month, but Vince wanted me to wait and review it with him, because I said, well, do you want me to wait and review it with you? And he said, yeah. He said he wanted to go see it and wait and, review it with him. So I did. I waited, and then he ended up getting hit by that hurricane and never got a chance to go see it. So I waited a couple more weeks to see if he was able to go see it, and he wasn't able to go see it. So it was already getting close to October, so I figured, well, I'm just going to review it for Horror Month. I know it's a month late. I know everybody in the world's already reviewed it, but I haven't reviewed it, and I have a lot to say about it. So I had to get on here and talk about this record-breaking horror film. Yeah, it pretty much broke all box office records. It made history, and it made $1 bazillion, as you know. And it's about time. It's about time a horror film steps up to the plate and says, you know what? This is what a horror film really is, and here you go, and that's what it is. Before I get into the review, though, I gotta tell you what happened when we went to go see this. So it was supposed to start at 9:15 in the morning, and we went there, I believe it was the day after it came out, this Saturday. And so my wife and I go in the theater, sitting there, and usually when you go into a theater, you got the music playing, or you got some sort of commercials on the screen, or something, and it was completely quiet. Just like that. There was no sound. And so we're sitting there waiting. So 9:15 comes, 9:15 goes, it's like 9:20, we're still sitting there waiting. So it's like 9:25. So I get up and I go out to the lobby, and it's a ghost town. There's like nobody out in the lobby. The theater that I went to go see it in, they're fixing it up. So there's a lot of construction and stuff going on, and a lot of the areas are blocked off and boarded up. But I walk out in the lobby, and there's nobody out there to talk to. So I walk all the way down to where the guys take your tickets, not outside, but the booth inside. And so I asked the guy, I said, well, it's 9:25. This movie is supposed to start at 9:15. Well, I don't know what to tell you. I can't say anything to you about this because I can't leave my post. You're going to have to walk outside and ask people at the ticket booth. And I was like, well, the movie could be going right now while I'm standing out here talking to you. So I'm not going to walk all the way out to the ticket booth and ask these people why this movie hasn't started, because it might be started. I just want to know why. Well, I can't tell you anything. I was like, okay. So I walk back in the theater. It hadn't started yet. And we wait, and we wait. So it's like 9:40. So finally, the lights go out, and everybody's like, oh yeah, woo. They're all cheering and stuff. And they're like, all right. So finally, and I've been waiting such a long time to see this movie. I read this book back when I was like 13 or 14 years old, and I'll get to that in a minute. And I'll get to the TV show and all that stuff in a minute too. But I've been waiting for such a long time, and I said, oh, of course this has to happen to me. For the one person who's been waiting for this for all these years, and the projector screws up. So anyway, we're sitting there, and the lights go off, and we're waiting. Lights come back on, and then the guy finally comes walking out. He's like, well, we're having some technical issues with the projector, and we will get it up and running here in a few minutes. So he walks off again, and then, so we're all just sitting there in the dark. So then the lights go off again, the movie starts. So we're like, oh yeah, finally. So it's pitch black in the movie theater, and we're all just sitting there, and we're hearing the beginning of the movie, and it's just still pitch black. There's no picture. We're just hearing this. And the guy next to me is like, man, this is creepy as all hell. It was kind of creepy, actually, just sitting there listening to the movie and not being able to see it. So then it turns itself off, and we're just sitting there in complete darkness with like nobody saying anything. And then I'm like, okay. And then the lights come back on again. So we're like, what is going on? By this time, it's past 10 o'clock. And again, this is supposed to start at 9:15. It's probably like 10:20. So finally the lights go back off, and the movie starts like 10 minutes into the film. I mean, the whole point in the beginning of it with the boat and Georgie and all that stuff was just already about to end, and everybody started going, oh no, yeah. And then it goes back off again. Then finally it comes back on in the beginning of the movie where it's supposed to. So that was my experience seeing it for the first time. Now, let's go back in time for a little while. When this novel very first came out, I was pretty much the same age, I think, as the kids in the book. So when I sat there and read this book, I really identified with those kids. Because if there was anybody in a loser's club, that was me. Because when I was growing up, I wasn't like the other kids. I was like those kids in the book. So when I read it, I could identify so much with those characters because that was me. I mean, that was me growing up. I was into movies. I was into comic books. I was into, going out and exploring, getting on my bike and riding out and just going places. And, and all the other kids at that time, of course, all they wanted to go out and do is go to party and weren't interested in movies and nobody read anything. And that wasn't me. I was very much in the Losers Club. I mean, I was part of that group growing up, and that's why the book was so special to me, and I could identify with all the characters in it. When it came on television, I was super excited. I was like, oh my God, they're making it into a TV series. Oh, this is going to be amazing. And I sat down there and watched the TV series, and I still remember to this day thinking, this isn't it. This isn't the book. That's not a scary clown. These actors aren't very good. The story is not the book. And everybody thinks it's such a classic. Everybody thinks it's like one of the greatest movies ever. And they think Tim Curry did an incredible job in the film, and he was so creepy and scary. And I never thought that. I just thought the TV series was goofy. I just thought it always came out as just goofy. I didn't like it. I didn't like Tim Curry's performance in it. Not that I don't like Tim Curry. I think he's amazing. But just his performance in that TV show, that wasn't the character. That wasn't the character that Stephen King wrote. And neither were these kids. All these kids in the TV series, that just wasn't the characters. That's not the characters that I fell in love with reading the book. So that's why I was really hoping somebody would make it and make it like the book. And here we go. It took all these years later to finally get the book that I fell in love with. And the thing to it about this is, until I actually started watching the movie, I had forgotten the impact that this thing had made on me, especially when I was a kid. And to this day, I still work on things. And the novel that I'm writing right now, if you don't know I'm a writer, I've written 6 books. I'm on my 7th book now. Some of the stuff that I'm writing about now was influenced from that book. And I didn't realize it until I watched this movie. And I'm like, oh, wow, I was so influenced by it. And I mean, it was one of those life-changing novels that I read when I was a kid. And if there was any movie that I was looking forward to this year, it was it. It was the big film, one of the big films of the summer that I was really looking forward to. And as soon as I seen the trailer for it, I knew they had it. I knew because I heard the dialogue in the trailer, and it's right out of the book. And the kids acting in the trailers were phenomenal. And I was like, this is going to be great. It is one of the best horror films I have ever seen. And I don't say that lightly because I've seen thousands of horror films. And this one is one of the greatest horror films I have ever seen. They got everything right. And it's one of those things that rarely happens, not even in a horror film, but just in a movie, that the script was incredible. The acting was incredible. The characters were incredible. The story was incredible. The effects were incredible. I mean, it brought all the stuff that makes something enjoyable and makes it a classic, they brought into this movie. And that's what this is. This is a complete classic. So speaking of the acting here, oh my God. Kid actors in this movie were phenomenal. They were absolutely phenomenal. And I'll give you an example. There's a character in the book and in the movie named Ben. He's kind of like a fat kid that, of course, all these bullies want to bully, obviously. And he was leaving out of school, and he ran into the girl that's in there. Her name's Beverly. And that whole scene just between him and her was so real, and it did not feel like people were just acting. It just didn't feel like two actors talking to each other. It felt like real people, like a real conversation. And it felt like somebody just set a camera up outside of a grade school and just recorded real people. And that's what this was. It's why it made it so good, is because the acting was so realistic, that these characters were so realistic. And you cared about these characters, and you cared what happened to them. And then you throw, of course, the crazy, creepy clown in here, and I was like, oh my god, they finally got the clown from the book in here. And this was the clown from the book. This was the Pennywise that Stephen King wrote about all those years ago. This is him. This is what I envisioned it to be. So let me say one thing about this movie is it's not, at least I didn't really think it was scary, because I don't think it was written to be scary. It was written to be more freaky, I guess, than scary. And if you sit here and think about what this movie is basically a bunch of kids are trying to find what they think is a serial killer, basically, and figure out what happened to one of the main character's brother. So during the summer, they all go off into this adventure, literally looking for somebody down in the sewers, and they think it could be a serial killer. They don't know it's a crazy, monster clown down there. It's a great story. I mean, that just makes it a great story, because you do have that element of, okay, it's mystery of these kids going off on their own to try to find this serial killer that's in the town killing off kids. And then, of course, it becomes sort of the monster in the sewer, obviously, which is great. And, that's what the whole movie is about. They nailed it. They nailed every scene that I can remember when I was a kid reading the book and visualizing what it would look like, and there it was on the screen. So this is probably right now my second favorite film of the year, next to Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman at this point still holds up as my favorite film of the year, but it comes in super close, or even just equals that, because I loved it from beginning to end, and there was nothing about this film I didn't like. I loved everything. I loved the portrayal of the clown. I loved the fact that it did get gross, too. It got very gory and very gross. So if you want to take your little kid thinking, oh, it's a movie about scary clowns in the sewer. No, it gets very graphic. It gets very gross, just to let you know. And it was great. Loved every second of that. And then, of course, at the very end, this is not a spoiler or anything, but at the very end, after the movie went off, it says, coming soon, chapter 2, or it said something like the end of chapter 1, and everybody's like, huh? What? There's more? I was like, come on, yeah, of course there's going to be more. The second chapter is obviously going to be about the adults, and I kind of like how they did that. I think that's a really smart move on the director and the writer's part on this, is you get invested with all these characters who are kids, and then the next movie, all these characters are going to be now adults, and I don't even think they've casted the people in the roles yet, because the next one comes out in 2019. So you've already been invested into these characters. Now you're going to see them again as grown-ups, and I think it's such a cool idea. So if there was any sort of Stephen King adaptation that I would say that's the best adaptation they've ever made from his novels, I'm going to probably say this is it. Of course, The Shining everybody loves, but that's not in a direct adaptation of The Shining. And I cannot think of a better way to start off Horror Month than to review this incredible film. And pretty much everybody's probably already gone and seen it, but if you're one of the few who waited until October to go out and say, now let's go see it, now it's time to go see a horror film, I applaud you, and I'm going to give this movie a golden machine. So, all month long we have more horror films, and we're going to be doing quite a lot of Stephen King stuff this month, mostly because the success of It, and just the fact that they're releasing a lot of Stephen King stuff because of It. So there's a lot of stuff coming out from Stephen King, and we're going to bring in a lot of stuff from Stephen King, so be prepared for that. So if you're a Stephen King fan, hopefully you will stick around, or if you're just one of our Maniac fans out there and you're enjoying Horror Month already and you're enjoying all these horror films, then stick around because we will be back very soon. Thanks for watching. Everybody's awesome. It is the real deal.